One of the best parts of camping is eating, and we've cooked some really cool things in our Coleman Camp Oven, so we want to see what all the hype is about this Omnia Oven.
We're smelling the little burnings.
You have found Explore, Trek, Adventure with Kelly and Greg. We cover everything camping from backpacking to adventure vans. If you haven't heard of this, this is actually an oven that is a donut shape, unlike the Coleman, which is a big box. When you buy only the oven, this is what you're gonna get. Comes in with a case, a carrying bag. This is the actual pan that the food's gonna go in to cook it. Then we got the heat plate. And it looks like it comes with a handle for the lid, but I'm gonna need to get a Phillips screwdriver to attach it. Guess I really didn't need the screwdriver. Seems like it's just made out of plastic. And of course the lid is aluminum. And this is just really a basic setup. You got your heat plate, you got your pan, and you got your lid. As you can see, this has a bunch of holes in the lid, but there is no thermometer. So how am I going to know how hot this is gonna be? I mean, who cooks without setting a temperature? In the instructions, it actually says you do not need a temperature gauge, but I don't know, it's so weird. But it also says though to maybe test it with a cake mix so that you can kind of determine what your temperature is gonna be, how hot it's gonna cook, what type of stove you have. They do actually sell a gauge, and we ended up purchasing one. It would be nice if it was included with the whole oven, but it's not. So we just actually slide it on here, and there's a little adapter tightening, and then you screw it on in there. It'll be interesting to see if this touches any of the food, if you cook over it and it goes into it or not. So there we have the gauge. This temperature gauge is a little unique. It's got a little bit of a rubber trim around it, which you don't normally see. As you can see, this does not have any sort of lining. It is basically, you just cook right inside the pan. So we ended up opting to get a cupcake liner. It's silicone, and it's gonna go right inside the pan itself. And so when we're cooking cupcakes or muffins, we can just cook it just like that inside. They also make some racks that can fit inside of the pan as well. Let's go inside and wash these up so we can get some cupcakes made. We're trying out a different way to do dishes in the van. We're using a squirt bottle with soapy water in it. That way we can not use up so much of the other water.
Since we can't use the induction oven, we brought our normal gas oven. We have the Camp Chef Everest 2X. You can run on these little greens, but those are expensive. So you can get a little 1 pound can. One problem we always had with this stove and the Coleman version is we never could put out these wind stoppers. Oh, look at that, it does fit. The Coleman would stick out, and so we were unable to use these. We'd have to lay it totally flat. We're gonna be doing a head-to-head oven video to see which one's actually the best in the future, but I wanted to at least show you the size comparison between the two. So these are both sitting on the stove. You can see the Coleman is definitely way bigger. If you caught our last video, we showed one of our van upgrades. Well, this is a steel plate. It started to show some tarnish, so we covered it in stickers. I think it looks pretty cool. So this is where we can put our paper towels.
We're using the Betty Crocker yellow cake mix. And we're gonna add it to our bowl here. It calls for water, oil, and eggs, but instead of eggs, we're gonna use applesauce. 1 egg equals a 1/4 cup of applesauce. And these things are really handy because they're just a 1/2 cup right here. Add that in. One thing the instructions does say is it needs to be heavily greased, not just the silicone, but also if you're just using the pan itself. So let's lube this up. The instructions also mention do not fill your pan up more than, there should be like an inch gap between the top and the batter. or your food. So we're gonna fill these up just part way. I think what we'll do is we'll fill up one that's super full, see if it makes a big difference. And then one that's kind of full. Before we start cooking, we need to take the stainless steel base and heat it up. This is also interesting. It says for shorter cooking times, 10 to 20 minutes, you actually want to preheat that base for on high for 3 minutes. And then you insert your pan and lid and turn it down. This is actually putting off quite a bit of heat, so let's go ahead and grab our cupcakes and put them on. Okay, so it just sets right into it, and then we're gonna put the lid on. And as you can see, the thermometer is already going up, and you need to be a little bit careful with these holes because hot steam can be coming out of it. I'm actually really curious how long this is gonna take, so we've started a stopwatch. It says to cook about the same temperature that you would in a normal oven. Cupcakes says 350, so we're gonna shoot for that. 2 minutes and we're at 150 degrees.
It's been 6 minutes and we're almost to 300 or around 280 degrees. We've kind of kept it really low to start with, so we may be a little low. Maybe next time we'll bump it up. But if we look inside, you can see the cupcakes are starting to rise up. We're coming up on 13 minutes. That's what the box said it is the lowest level. The thermometer has been hovering right around 300. It hasn't really gone up any higher than that. We haven't turned it up just to kind of keep the test similar to see what's going to happen. They're looking good. They smell good. I don't smell any burning. There's one potential con, and it's not really a super big negative, but this little nub here, it's in a little indentation, and you got these big gloves on. It's a little hard to grab. It'd be kind of nice if it was a little taller. Let's see if our cupcakes. Oh, ooh, that's hot right coming out of that hole. Okay, let's turn off the heat, let it cool down a little bit, and we'll give them a try. Yeah, that ended up being closer to 15 minutes. We're gonna try to stop them from cooking any further. And to get them out, there's a little nub on each side so you can grab. See if it works. Oh, it's hot. Let's do a little magic here. Hot. Hot. So the bottoms are a little brown, but the rest of it looks pretty good. I think we can do better. We're gonna preheat this thing. They say to cook it super hot. So we're gonna get this guy on there. And we're gonna get that thing nice and hot. So it's really gonna start cooking right away, because I think it took a long time for it to get up to 300.
Round 2. This pan did cool down pretty quick, so I can easily touch it. Let's put our silicone in there. Actually, let's hold it like this. We're gonna add a little frosting to our cupcakes and see how they taste. First batch, I would consider this a success.
I would definitely consider those a success. Oh, delicious. That's our 10-minute timer. I did notice that when I did this a little hotter, the temperature got closer to 350. It's kind of stalled out around 330 though. What do you think?
Clean.
The nice thing about this design is like they're all going to be heating pretty much the same, except the inside. You can see right there, a little crispy. We made some bread dough in the bread maker last night. Looks pretty good. We're gonna take this cupcake silicone mold out, make a bread circle, and then see how this whole thing cooks just without any kind of insert in there. This is the second batch out of the mold. You can see they're significantly crispier on the bottom than the first batch. They did cook a lot faster. It's more like almost 3 to 5 minutes faster. So you're gonna have to really play with it. And I think that's why they say use a cake mix so you're not destroying your own foods. When you're using a camp stove, there's a lot of variables that are at play. Like the wind can have a huge effect on the stove itself. So trial and error just means more cupcakes. I do admit these cupcakes turned out very good. This is a huge bite, doing it anyways. The bread dough is a little chilly, so we're sticking around the dash. Hopefully we can warm it up.
Okay, we're gonna spray up the pan. It actually says maybe flour, but we don't have any, so we're just going with grease. Make sure it doesn't stick. Okay, the goal is to fit this in there, leaving an inch space clearance from the top. Okay, so we're just gonna try to roll this out, elongate it, and then before I put it in there, so let's see, let's try to get it longer. Maybe if I twist it in it. Next, let's heat up the pan and then get cooking. We don't know how long this is gonna take. This is gonna be a total experiment.
It's been 5 minutes. We're smelling a little burning, so this only says little left, like 275. Ooh, girl, look at that. That is
Oh no.
too hot on the bottom. So we're gonna lower it quite a bit. So that just goes, you gotta do a lot of testing. Don't expect it to come out perfect the first probably 10 times. I think I may have screwed this one up because I ended up frying that bottom plate just because it says get it real hot, but that's for short cooking. This is gonna go for 20 to 30 minutes. So I shouldn't have preheated it. It's hard to tell, but I have this thing just barely on. And it's been holding the 300 degrees. We've been smelling a little more burning. Let's check. Ooh, it's definitely puffed up and cooking. I think we're just gonna have to cut the bottom off. Keep in mind when you take this lid off, you're taking the temperature sensor with it, so it's gonna drop quite a bit before and then when you put it back on, it'll warm back up. We're at 22 minutes. I think we're gonna call it here and see what we get. Question is, how do we get it out? It looks like some kind of Amazon larvae that you would find growing out, a grub, a big fat grub. Oh, watch out. I do kind of like the shape it makes. That's kind of cool. Should probably let it cool a little bit, but we're impatient. Oh, that actually did cook. Probably could use a little bit more. But you can see the bottom. It's definitely crispy. I call that a success. Yeah, this is a little hot down there. So if we had to do this again with bread, I think what we would do is we would basically roll it out into much thinner, probably use like half as much dough, roll it out real thin so it makes a nice, fills up the whole space nicely. Also let it warm up to room temperature and then give that a try. And then also do not preheat when you're doing something that's gonna be on there a long time. I had that stove on like just barely on and it was maintaining 300 degrees. So once it heats up, it actually maintains that heat really, really well. Let's cut in the middle, see if it's anything different. It's a little stodgy. Even though this was not a success, I think everybody that uses one of these stoves is gonna have to go through these growing pains where you're just gonna destroy everything the first couple times. Don't give up hope. I think with some practice, you'll probably get it. Final thoughts. Do we think the Omnia oven is overrated?
No. Just no.
Just plain old no. I also do not think so. I think it's actually a nice little oven. There are some pros and cons, which we're gonna go over here. And I think the one for me is it's 3 separate pieces. And
4 if you include the temperature gauge. 5 if you include the silicone.
I'm kind of talking when you're having to cook.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a limited space like this, if you need to move the lid off and the pan off, yeah, and and your ingredients off, it just takes up a lot of space.
It does take a lot of space, yeah.
Compared to some of the other ovens.
Especially if you have a 2-burner stove.
Another potential con is the temperature fluctuation. It being so small, you're using a burner that has a lot of heat, and it can go from 0 to 350 like super fast.
Very touchy.
And then once you get it up there, it actually holds that temperature in pretty well. And so,
which is gonna not great if you've already gotten it up really high, because then, like what we did, we burned the bread.
as you can tell, like within several minutes, it just fried that bottom.
I think one of my biggest cons is that it does not work on the induction cooktop, because that would save us so much space, make it so much easier. We don't have to worry about fuel. We don't have to worry about using the big camp stove.
Yeah, us being all electric, that is a major con. But us just maybe getting a small single burner thing, I think that actually might work.
One of the pros I have is the being able to use that silicone cup holder, muffin cake, cupcake container.
Trays.
Yeah, it made it really easy and clean to cook in.
Nice bonus to that is it folds completely flat,
Completely
so we can
flat,
stick that against the wall inside the cabinet. It won't take up any extra space.
It's super easy to
Add
wash.
the little tabs to make it pull out. So overall, I think that was really good. Definitely pick one of those up if you're going to buy one of these.
And I think that'll be good for us to get one of those trays as well, just to see how, maybe if we had that tray, maybe the bread wouldn't have burned so quickly.
Our last pro is we really like the size of this thing. It's nice and compact. Plus it comes with a bag that's going to keep everything from falling apart, flying around inside the van. Totally like that.
And it's super lightweight as well.
The question comes down to, should you buy one?
Yes.
Yes, you should. If you're even remotely into camp cooking, it's definitely a cool thing to play with. And
I'm actually really looking forward to trying out a lot more different recipes with it as well.
yeah, and I think it's way better than just bread, because I think like putting nachos in there, frying that up and doing some of that.
Yeah.
You could cook lasagna in there
Yeah.
potentially.
Oh, lasagna sounds really good. Of course, we'll have links for everything we used today in the description below.
Go watch this video next. You can find us at exploretrekadventure.com, and we'll see you next time.